Hi, my name is Amber Lee, and I'm doing a video series on HLRCC, which is Hereditary Leiomyoma and Renal Cell Cancer Syndrome. I'm not a doctor, and I don't have all the answers about this, but what I found is that I've had the symptoms of it for a long time, but it's very underdiagnosed, and even though I did a lot of research about my symptoms, I didn't find a lot of answers, so I was hoping by sharing the story that maybe it would help somebody who's looking for answers themselves. So I wanted to talk a little bit about leiomyoma. So leiomyoma, it's kind of a funny name for these red bumps that are a pretty common indicator of a person having HLRCC. So it doesn't mean that you absolutely have it, but it's a sign that you could have it. So in about 2003, in my early 20s, I started to get some red bumps on my arm, maybe like 4 of them in a patch. And at the time, I was working at the legislature, and I was applying to grad school, living in a crappy little apartment, and I did what a lot of people who don't have really good medical insurance or money do when something like that shows up. I ignored it. I figured that because I have red hair, I have pretty sensitive skin, so I thought that maybe I just had some kind of allergy to some kind of soap or food or something, and I just wasn't able to sort it out. So I let it go for about 2 years, and then I started to get some more of the bumps. And I went to a doctor, and she at first thought maybe it was some kind of infection in my skin, like infected hair follicles or something. And she gave me an antifungal medication, and I used that for 2 weeks. And of course, because these are tumors, nothing happened. It didn't change at all. So I went back, and she recommended that we do a biopsy. So I was nervous about having the biopsy done, but honestly, when I requested the paperwork from the doctor for the biopsy, I thought that she had done it on my shoulder, and it was actually on my hip. So it was such not a big deal, but it made no lasting impression on my memory at all. So don't be nervous about that. So if you have to have one done. So she did the biopsy, and it came back, and it said that it was a leiomyoma, and these are benign tumors that show up on your muscles. So people commonly get them on their extremities, like their arms or their legs. I have them on both shoulders, my hips. I have some on my legs, not a ton, and then I just got a couple on my jawline. They're, I think, from what I've read, a little bit hard for dermatologists to diagnose because they look different on different people. Mine are mostly an annoyance. I never like them because they look like they look like you have some kind of skin infection. They're bumps. They're a little bit warm to the touch. They hurt a little bit. I was always kind of nervous about them because I didn't know how much they would spread if I would end up covered with them. But other people will get a big kind of field of them, or they'll be larger, or they'll hurt really bad. So I was lucky because mine are somewhat contained. So the doctor told me, she said they're leiomyoma, and she said there's not really anything we can do about them. We can do a skin graft to remove them, but that's really more disfiguring than what you have going on, so we should just leave them alone and, just kind of keep an eye on them. So, but not worry about them, which is the opposite of what I did. I actually worried about them. I thought, well, what if they spread all over my body? What if one of them becomes malignant and nobody notices because one was tested and it was benign? Why do I have these things? And so, I did a lot of Googling, and, probably scared myself to death, and then, but nothing came of it. I went to another dermatologist in town, and she confirmed, yes, these are leiomyoma. She hadn't seen them before. Um, and she showed them to a couple doctors, and she said, yeah, there's really nothing that we can do about it. I went to a plastic surgeon. He took a look, and he said he hadn't seen it before, and he agreed, the only option would have been a skin graft, which I didn't want to do. It just sounds kind of horrible for how small the problem was. So I kind of just, other than when I was going out in the sun and wanted to wear a sleeveless shirt, I just kind of forgot about it. I just wear long sleeves most of the time anyway. I live in Alaska, so it's not a huge deal. But then, at the beginning of last year, I was diagnosed with a melanoma on my arm. And I had that removed. And the dermatologist that I saw also saw the leiomyoma, and he asked me if I'd ever been diagnosed with, he called it Reed syndrome. And he explained it a little bit to me. And whenever I did some research, I realized it was also, I had uterine fibroids, that those two can be connected, and that they were now calling it HLRCC. So I finally, after all this time, so that's 11 years, even though I'd gone to lots of doctors for the leiomyoma, and then also through a whole bunch of processes to deal with the fibroids, they put the two together, and they realized what had been causing it was this syndrome. And although it's not, super positive news because it can cause an aggressive kidney cancer, I did feel a little bit better knowing what was going on, because it's weird to have something happening to your body and not really have any understanding as to why. So I joined an online support group so I could learn a little bit more about it. I went and I'm thinking about doing a clinical study with the National Institute of Health, and one of the things that they requested were the biopsy of the leiomyoma. So this is something to keep in mind. When I called the doctor to get the report, she said she thought that they had thrown it away because they destroy records after a certain period of time. So, I think it's important to somehow keep your own medical records if it's possible. She was able to find mine, which was great. But if she hadn't, I would have to go through the biopsy again, which is just kind of a pain and extra unnecessary expense. So I guess what I would have to say to anybody, if you have something like red bumps on your body and your doctor can't identify what they are, I think it's worth doing a biopsy to find out. Like I said, I'm not a medical professional, but it seems like something you should know. And then the other thing is, if they are identified as leiomyoma, I would encourage you to take that next step to find out if you have HLRCC, because if you do, you could, you need to get your kidneys scanned every year, and it could save your life. So it's definitely worth finding out. I mean, I'm very lucky that in that time, in those 11 years, I didn't have any problems with my kidneys. And even though this was missed that whole time. So I just wanted to share this, and hopefully if somebody is out there and like me, they're trying to figure out what's going on with them, maybe this will help. And I'm going to do maybe a couple more videos about some of the other aspects. Like I said, I'm just learning too, but I think it's important for us to share our stories. This isn't one of the more, because it's rare, it's not one of the more popular cancers. to talk about. So I think it's important just to get information out there. And that's it. Thank you.